The Kennedy Center and the Prince William County Public Schools present What is Improvisation? With Billy Taylor and the Billy Taylor Trio.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome. Yeah, there's somebody saying good morning. Good morning. All right. Welcome. My name is Billy Taylor, and this is the Billy Taylor Trio. This is Steve Johns on drums. And Chip Jackson on bass. Thank you. This program is on improvisation. Improvisation is something very special, and we'll tell you about it in just a moment, but we want you to know that it's presented by the Kennedy Center, by the Prince William County Public Schools, and it's demonstration and performance, not just performance. We want to show you how we improvise. Improvised music, especially in jazz, is like telling a kind of a story. Jazz is a way of playing, and it's a repertory of pieces, a group of pieces that sort of defines that way of playing as it develops, as it has developed over many years. So what we do when we play, we make up things as we go along. In the same way, as you see, when I begin to talk to you, I'm not using a script, I just say what comes to mind. When I sit down at the piano, I can do that, I just do something. So I use phrases in the same way that we use the language. And that's true of all of the instruments. Each person in this trio does something very special and different. Each person does something different. For instance, the drummer does one thing, the bassist does something else, the pianist does something totally different. It's just a trio, it's 3 people. But we do a lot of different things, as you can hear. The song we just played for you a moment ago is called Hi, Y'all. If we play it at the beginning of the show. If it's at the end of the show, we say, Bye, y'all. Same tune. But anyway, that's just so you know what we're deviating from. That's the melody. And that melody that I was playing is a kind of interesting melody. It's very simple, just like that. But we do something else with it. And I'm going to show you how we do that. Let's start with the drums. The drums are the heartbeat of the music. I mean, the drums kind of get you, and like your heart beats and you get a certain kind of steady rhythm. Drums do that. Looks a lot easier than most people think it is. You look at the drums, you figure, hey, I can do that. All he's doing is just kind of beating on this instrument and that. It's much more musical than that. And it's much more complicated than that. For instance, when Steve John plays the drums, he might start with his right foot like this. He might add his left foot like this. He might add his right hand like this. He might add his left hand like this. See? Now, all right. That's just the basic part of his improvisation. When he's really going to do a solo, sometimes he takes a piece like a song that we recently recorded called Titoro. This is different from the way we recorded it because when we play it with Steve, it sounds different. And the reason it sounds different is because sometimes he uses his hands, sometimes he plays things with the sticks on different instruments, on the cymbals, on the various parts of the drum set. You've got all of those cymbals and all those drums, and he uses them musically like this. Steve Johns. Well, I'm glad to see so many of you out there. We have about 1,000 middle school and high school students right here in this auditorium, and we've got, I guess thousands viewing in their classrooms, and that's really very exciting. We're at the Hylton High School in Prince William County, Virginia. This broadcast is being crewed by the Hylton High School TV production students. We're very proud of that. I mean, these are people your age out there doing this, manning the cameras and all behind the scenes and everything. That's very exciting. Now, actually, we have so many things that we want to talk to you about. We want to involve you as an audience, and you're going to get a chance to ask us how we do what we do, and anything that you always wanted to ask a musician and couldn't ask him because he was up here and you were out there. Well, this time you're going to get a chance to do that. And some of you who are listening in your classrooms around the country, when you call in, you can talk to us. We'll hear you and you'll hear us and see us, and we'll try to answer your questions as well as the questions of the young people right here in front of us. So, once again, we have Steve Johns and Chip Jackson playing with us. And the idea is to give you an idea of how we use the language of jazz when we improvise, how we make up something on the spur of the moment, how we do musically what I'm doing verbally right now, which is just talking to you as I think about what I want to say. Now, what I want to say is about the bass player this time. Chip Jackson, playing the acoustic bass instead of the bass guitar. He's playing bass violin. It's a big violin, as you can see, a very big violin. And he plays not only you heard him playing pizzicato. He was picking the strings, plucking the strings. He also plays arco, which is using the bow like this. More often, though, he uses pizzicato, and he can play very rhythmically when he uses pizzicato like this. See what I mean? All right. Now, those are just the phrases, the kinds of things that we use to build an improvisation. That's not the improvisation itself. He can take a familiar tune and put both of those things together, because sometimes he kind of strums the bass like a guitar, and I think you'll see what I mean. You may even recognize this tune. So you see, the bass is not just an instrument of just accompaniment, and nor is the drums. They both play solo, but they do play, we play together. And when we play together, we have to listen to one another. And you'll hear us do that in a minute. But right now, I'd just like to go to the piano and show you some of the things that I do. For instance, I could play a melody like this. Now, when I play that, that's a tune I wrote called I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. If I add those notes to it that we call harmony, the other notes in the chord, like this. it sounds a certain way. But there's a kind of jazz that sounds like European classical music. There's another kind of jazz that sounds like country and western. Another kind of music another kind of jazz that sounds like other kinds of music, because jazz has many styles. So if I play that melody, I can change those harmony notes and do something like this. And it sounds different. If I change the rhythm and play it in one, how many of you have ever heard this song? Anybody ever heard that? Sure, yeah. What is it? What is it? Sure, The Entertainer, right. Okay, that's a ragtime piece. If I were to play my song that I was just playing for you a moment ago in that style, it might sound like this. So you see, you change the character of the music when you change the rhythm. Now, if I were to take the harmony and do some other kinds of things. So it gets a totally different kind of feeling. That's not Johann Sebastian Bach, but it is something that uses the same kind of multiple melody, more than one melody at a time. The way I normally play this piece, though, combines much of that. And so when I improvise on that melody and those harmonies and that rhythm, sometimes it sounds like this. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like now to ask if you have any questions about improvisation or about the things that we do. Those of you, I'm going to ask someone here in the audience, but also those of you who might want to call us on the phone. The number is 1-800-578-1396. That's 1-800-578-1396. You have a question?
Yes, hello, my name is Pat Posey. I'm a student here at Hylton. And I was wondering, I have a two-part question. First part is, what percentage of your practice time is spent improvising, and what percent is spent reading music or working on fundamentals?
Basically, my practice time now is spent really working on things that are problems, something new music or something that I'm not familiar with, a style of music or something that I have to get ready for performance. So much of my practice is that. Every now and then when I have the time, I like to take some technical practice and just work on some pianistic problems, some things that I want to do better, playing in octaves or playing in counterpoint or using some kind of technical, solving some kind of technical problems. So when I do that, I try to spend a couple of hours a day on that particular problem. But when I was a student in high school, I used to have to divide my hour up by practicing technically first for maybe, if I only had 1 hour to practice, I'd spend about 20 minutes with technique. I'd spend about 15, 20 minutes just reading through some music, and the rest of the time working on something that I had to get ready to play. Okay?
Okay, and the second part, you were talking earlier about classical music and how it's influencing the jazz. Could you tell me what aspects of classical music do you use in your improvisation?
Well, jazz is America's classical music. It takes all of the elements that are a part of our culture and puts them into puts those elements into a perspective which is unique to the United States of America. It's music which is indigenous to our culture. So it is our classical music. I use European classical music because when I was a student, when I was in high school, I couldn't study. There was no one to study jazz with. So I wanted to learn to play the piano properly. So I studied Bach, I studied Mozart, I studied the usual classical repertoire to learn to do specific things on the piano. So to learn how to play properly in octaves or how to get certain types of touch on the piano. For instance, if I were going to do, there were certain things that I used to work on where I played with just my left hand. Well, you don't just do that naturally. You have to practice and work on it so that the fingers know where to go and the brain knows where to tell the fingers to go. Yes, ma'am. What is your name?
Hi, Tiffany Williams from Friendly Middle School. I don't play an instrument. What advice would you give to someone who's interested in jazz but does not play an instrument?
I would hope that you could get a hold of an instrument and see if you like to play the piano or the drums or the violin or the saxophone. You might start with the voice. You might try to sing and see if you could, so since you already have that instrument, you can sing and see if you can listen to people like Ella Fitzgerald or some singers that you might like, that you think are really terrific, and see if you can sing like that. Listen to the best people in jazz that you can find and try to see if you can do some of the things that they do. It'll help you get an idea of what you might want to do. You learn to play jazz, you can learn to play jazz in a similar way to the way you learn to talk. I mean, when you were a little girl, I mean, your mother or your father or an older sister said, say the word this way, pronounce it this way. Someone told you to do that. Maybe a music teacher or a teacher in your school can help you like that. Thank you. We have a caller, and let's see, from Fredericksburg. And hello there. What's your question?
Hi, my name is Amy Sapansky, and I'm a former student at Hylton High School, and I now play in the jazz ensemble at Mary Washington College.
Terrific.
My question is, how long have you been playing your instruments, and do you also play other instruments?
Well, I've been playing piano for longer than I want to tell you about. I've been playing for about 50 years. And I'm going to let one of the younger guys tell you how long he's been playing. I'm going to let my drummer, Steve Johns, tell you a little about that.
All right, how you doing? I started when I was 9 years old, started playing the drums and studied with a great teacher in Boston. His name's Alan Dawson. And I started playing some piano too. I practiced piano, and we're doing that for like the last 10 years. And also I picked up the trumpet over the last 2 years. And I work on that. I bring that on the road when we're on the road. I bring a practice mute and play in my room.
So he plays 3 instruments. How many instruments do you play?
Well, I play 3. I started out on piano when I was about 8, and I started playing the bass when I was 12, and I've been playing the bass for 30 years. And I play some guitar.
As one can see. All right. Other questions? Do I have another question? Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Taylor. My name is Zach Quintana from Osborne Park High School, and you worked with some of the greatest jazz musicians in history. And in working with Miles Davis, was there anything that maybe you learned from Miles Davis's approach to improvisation that you could share with us? Maybe some helpful hints that might be of aid to some aspiring jazz musicians that may be in this room.
Well, everybody can learn from the great artists in jazz. Miles is certainly a musician who had something very special to say. When I worked with him, he was not a big name. He was just another side man in the band. We were playing at Birdland, and we were playing with people like J.J. Johnson, Charlie Parker, and Dizzy Gillespie, and others. And so I didn't really get to focus on him as the Miles Davis we all know until he became a leader. But even then, one can learn from the way that he approached various styles of jazz. I mean, he at one point was a bebop player when he played with Charlie Parker. A little later, he said, I don't want to do all of that. I want to say things in a more sensitive way. I want to slow the tempo down and play things which are a little more mellow. And so he and Jerry Mulligan and many other musicians came up with a concept that we now call the cool style of jazz. And that was everything, instead of being very bombastic and very energetic, they brought everything down to the level of the acoustic bass, because we didn't have amplifiers in those days. And so you could hear everything. You could hear what the tenor player was doing, what the alto player was doing, what each instrument was doing. And that's a very important thing to anyone playing any kind of music, to be able, if you're playing in a string quartet, to be able to hear what the viola is doing, what the other instruments are doing, so that you can blend in and make your part as important as it is, but in concert with them. So I advise everybody who is learning to play the music, listen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have a caller from Dale City. Hello.
Yes, I was wondering how you suggest to build up confidence to perform such complex jazz pieces as you just performed.
Well, one way one builds up confidence, I remember when I was a very young player, and I was living in Washington, D.C., and I used to go on amateur programs. The walk from the wings of the stage to the piano seemed like 10 miles. It seemed so far away. It's because I was very nervous. Once I got to the piano, I was okay. In answer to your question, I think the way you build up confidence is to be sure of what you're going to play, so that you are absolutely in control. When I go to the piano, one of the things, or when Chip plays the bass, or when Steve plays the drums, I mean, I can just sit and say, and the reason I can do that is because I've practiced for hours on scales, on all of the technical things, in the same way that if you want to speak to people, you get your words together. You look in the dictionary, you find out what the words mean, so that you can express yourself by talking. You say, hey, this is what I want to tell you. Well, what I want to tell you is music, and so I don't have to tell you whether this is sad or happy. See, you know that's sad. You know this is happy. So just the kind of way I approach it gives you that idea. But that comes from hour after hour of practice. I mean, I had to really just learn how to do that. Hey, we've got a caller from Washington, D.C.
How you doing, Dr. Taylor?
And how are you?
I'm blessed. My name is Mike Johnson. I'm not a musician. I studied a little bit of jazz, the history of jazz, though, at Howard University here in Washington. And what I'd like to ask you, you said earlier that this is an American classical music. But in reading Amir Baraki, then Leroy Jones, as he penned his book, Blues People. He also, I think he agreed with you, but I'm not sure, but he also took the roots of jazz all the way back to Africa. Can you kind of speak on that and make the connection there for me, please?
Sure. Just a moment ago, I was playing something which was spiritual. I was playing Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. That was the first kind of music that was created by Africans when they were brought to this country as slaves. They were not allowed in states like Virginia and North Carolina and states in the South. They were not allowed to use the drum. So they had to create a kind of music that expressed what they felt without the aid of something that they had used in Africa, which was very important to their musical concepts, which was the drum. When they took the drum away, it's my opinion that many of the things happened. For instance, in the spiritual, one hears all of the aspects of jazz that we now hear. For instance, in this spiritual. One can hear rhythmically some of the things that Africans were putting into the music. We call that syncopation now. But this, for instance. Now that's far removed from the jazz that we know, but to give you a better idea of where that came from, or where what we played comes from, I was asked some time ago to take three notes, C, A, and G, and improvise on it. And I did that. The reason I could use jazz to do that is because the rhythms that came from the spiritual, the way we approach tonality, like, that's very much out of the African American tradition. And you hear that, not just in the spiritual, not just in the pieces that we played for you so far, but in the CAG. The CAG that well, if I put that a little closer together, I actually have the beginning of a melody, which sounds like this. So that's how we can improvise on 3 particular notes. And to go back to what the gentleman was asking about in terms of this being America's classical music, jazz was created by African Americans. They were Africans when they first got here, but they became Americans very quickly because all of the things that were a part of their African tradition were stripped away from them. They had nothing. Most people, if you came from Ireland, you came from Scotland, you came from Norway or somewhere, you could bring musical instruments, you could bring all kinds of things with you and practice the kinds of cultural supports that you had at home. Well, because Africans were slaves in many cases, they couldn't do that, so they had to create something that expressed themselves. And what they created was a body of music that started with the spiritual and went into the blues and ultimately became jazz and many other styles of music. And so we're very proud of the fact that we have come up with something which is very useful, not only to African Americans, but to everybody all over the world. Let's go to another caller. Let's go to Fort Lauderdale in Florida.
All right, my name is Joey.
What's
and
your
I
name?
was just wondering, do you play any other styles of music besides jazz?
Do I play any other styles of music besides jazz? I have played other styles. I played Latin music. I played some blues things and some gospel and so forth. But basically, I express myself through jazz. Other questions? Is there another question? Ah, there's one. Yes.
I'm Kendra James from Bevel Middle School. Sometimes in art you improvise as you create a painting or a sculpture. For example, using a pattern or a color in a way that is sort of a gut reaction. Do you use the same thing in your music, and can you give me an example?
Sure. One can take, I just took 3 notes, and to show you that you can do it again, why don't I ask people out there to give me 3 other notes, and I'll come up with I'll improvise another tune. Give me a note over here. Somebody give me a note. Huh? What's the note? Yeah. Huh? What note? B flat, I heard. Another note. One at a time, one at a time. B flat, I heard. Now here, let me hear. F sharp. 1, right here. Huh? C? Okay, so I have B flat, which is this note, F sharp, and C. Let's see what we can do with that. Thank you. That's a collective improvisation. As you can see, we each took a little turn at it. Let's go to Virginia Beach. We have a caller at Virginia Beach.
Hello.
Yeah.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your many years of dedication to exposing the youth of this country and others, I guess, to the unique and beautiful art form. I'm a product of the South Bronx, and I remember back in 1970, not to give your age away, but you coming to my junior high school, and it made a big impression on me.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Second of all, I'd like to ask you for some suggestions. I have an 18-year-old son now, and I would like to get him into the music. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, breaking into music as a profession is not easy. One usually has to start by getting to know other people who are already in the field and having them help you sort of break the doors down, because there are a lot of people who play very well who are already established, and so it's not easy. But if you have talent, if your son has talent and he can make a tape and get it around, have people listen to it, can get an opportunity to have people like myself and others who may visit Virginia Beach or wherever you happen to be and hear him, the possibility of him being able to perform with someone is very good. For instance, a little later in this program, we're going to have some students that we had the opportunity to hear for the first time, and I think you'll agree that they play pretty well. So when you hear them, on occasions like this, one gets to hear young people who are potentially going to go in the business if they feel like doing that, and maybe they're just going to play for their own amusement. Either one is really very admirable. I have a lot of friends who do both. So I hope your son will make a tape, that he'll try to get it in the hands of someone who can help him. That seems to be the quickest and surest way to do it. Well, let's see. Let's go to this audience right in front of me and see if we have, we have a gentleman.
How are y'all doing?
Fine.
My name is Kevin Katims. I'm a 93 graduate of Hylton High School, and I just currently moved back up here from Virginia Tech University. I'm a vocalist and a pianist, and I was wondering, I found that music helps me kind of put away the stresses and the troubles of today's society, and I was wondering what kind of goes through your mind, what are some of your dominating thoughts as you're playing and as you're improvising?
Well, basically, it depends on what I'm saying. If I have something that is quiet and kind of quick, I'll just say, well, okay, this is what it is. Other times, I'm more reflective, and as you say, there are times when music makes me feel a certain way, and so I express that. What I'm thinking about is what it is that I'm trying to say, because I'm usually playing for an audience. Yes, there is a caller from Montana. All right, okay.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you know when to change keys when you guys are improvising a piece of music?
The only way you can, I'll let someone else do. Since I started that, I'll let Chip answer that question.
Well, I basically listen to what Billy's going to do, and part of jazz is the reaction between the musicians, and that's part of the great part about it, the spontaneous reaction. And it's ear and hand coordination, very quick. So I listen for when he's going to change and go as quickly as I can.
Other questions? We have, speaking of quick responses, many of the things that we do require, the question was a very good one because he was asking about going to different keys. For instance, a lot of times I will just arbitrarily decide, I'm going to modulate, I'm going to play this in another key. So as soon as they hear what I'm doing, even Steve on drums began to play another kind of background. And so to show you what I mean, I have some young people, I mentioned them a little earlier. Jazz, as I said, is a way of playing, and it's a repertoire of pieces. This is from the repertoire, and I'd like to get these young people to come out. Come on out, fellas. I got a chance to meet them. All right. What's your name?
Robert Fairchild.
How long have you been playing?
6 years.
Where do you go to school?
Garfield.
All right. And what's your name?
Brian Aspey.
How long have you been playing?
6 years.
6 years, all right.
And school? Stonewall Jackson.
Stonewall Jackson, all right. Okay. Let me see, let me get this to move just a little bit. All right. Okay, you're going to have to come to me. This won't go too far.
My name's Matthew Nagel. Matthew Nagel.
Where are you from?
From Garfield.
Good. That's a nice instrument. What kind of saxophone is it?
Super Action 80.
All right, Super Action 80. All right, come on over here.
David Alec.
From where?
Garfield High School.
All right. How long have you been playing?
10 years.
10 years. All right. Can you hit a high C? Let me see it. Hit one. Not right now. Okay. What's your name?
Mike Jarvis.
Mike Jarvis. How long have you been playing, Mike?
About 6 or 7 years. 6 or 7 years.
6 or 7 years. All right. Hey, that's a pretty guitar. What kind of guitar is that?
That's a Washburn.
It's a what?
A Washburn.
Washburn line. Okay. All right. Now, we ran over a piece by the great Duke Ellington. It's a very simple piece. As a matter of fact, I did something with 3 notes. He's better than I am, so he did something with just 2 notes. These 2 notes. You know, and it's called Cjm Blues. And everybody, you're going to get a chance to hear these young people play. This is our version of Cjm Blues. I'd like very much to thank all of you who are here, all of you who called, and we'd like to thank the Prince William County school system and everyone who was responsible for us coming over to visit you. I hope that you have learned at least some of the things that we do when we improvise, because to improvise is really just to say something to you. We said something pretty happy using, what'd you think of these young men, huh? How about that? All right, yeah. See, they'll be coming back at some future date, and they'll be doing this for you with their own groups, see? So, once again, we'd like to thank you on behalf of Chip Jackson on bass, Steve Johns, these 5 very talented young men, and I'd like to thank you very much for being a very attentive audience and a very responsive one. Thank you very much. Hope to see you again soon. I hope you'll come to hear. I hope you'll come back and hear the Turtle Island Quartet. They'll be here, and they're a wonderful group. You'll love them. The Turtle Island Quartet. Don't forget that.